I'm going to hand over now to our main presenter for today, who's Irene Black, our clinical lead. So over to you, Irene.
Thanks very much, Maureen, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Apologies for a bit of a shaky start here. It's going to be more of a whistle-stop tour. I recognise some of the names out there. Fortunately, you're not able to see me at this moment in time, but we'll crack on anyway. First of all, safety climate survey, why, what and how. What is it really all about? Well, patient safety, I think you appreciate, is an absolute essential element of all healthcare. And we need to do improvement continuously to make sure we're delivering a safe service to our patients. Quality improvement's been part of the terms of dentist service for some years now. I think you'll probably agree we haven't maybe engaged in this just as well as we might. We haven't got a lot of enthusiasm for audit, etc. And that's part of the reason that the Chief Dental Officer has decided that this activity, doing the safety climate survey, would be important to try and enable us to build a quality improvement culture. So what do we mean about a safety culture? Culture's not really anything. You'll have heard it bandied about lots in relation to organisations, particularly in healthcare. Culture's not something you can actually see or touch. It's really about how things feel. This is one of the definitions of what safety culture is. Safety culture of an organisation, it's about individuals, it's about what they think, it's what they do, it's about attitudes, it's about behaviours, and it's about commitment, and it's the style of the organisation. So to kind of sum it up, culture's the way you think, you act, and you interact. It's not exactly tangible, it's more of an ethos. So why is this a safety climate? Why is it not a safety culture survey? That's really because, as I've described earlier, culture's not something you can measure specifically. It's made up of different elements. And the term safety climate refers to the measurable components of the culture. The climate just provides a snapshot of what that culture looks like, and it's at a given moment in time. The components of the climate survey is thought to be about things like leadership, communication, workload, team load, and safety systems, and that's what we look at as part of this survey. So what's the process? Some of you might have started the survey already, some of you might be halfway through it, some of you might have given up. Hopefully this will get you moving again. It is effectively, it's a questionnaire. It's accessed online, hopefully. It's really much better if you encourage all the staff in your practice to take part to get best results. There's 5 sections and 28 statements. It should only take you about 15 minutes or so to complete the survey. The questions are, there's 28 questions, and they ask you really to score the statement. And it's a scale of 1 to 7, and it's about how much you agree or disagree with that statement. It's really clear, you'll manage that with no problem at all. Before you even get started, this is really just an overview of what happens. The first thing that has to happen is you have to nominate somebody to lead in the survey. It doesn't need to be a dentist, it can be somebody with some administrative skills. That person will get the practice registered. They'll also register all the members of the dental team to do the survey. The members taking part will then get an email. That will take them to the survey, which they'll complete and submit. After 75% or so have done the survey, you run the report. Then the interesting point where you have the team meeting to look at your results, and then you develop an action plan. As I say, that's an overview, and we'll go into a wee bit more detail about most of these sections as we go through. Oh, missed a slide. Sorry, jumped a slide. And it's a very important slide indeed. This, for me, is probably, if you take nothing away from today, take this with you. this is where you'll find all the information that actually helps you to go through this. I appreciate that it looks boring, it looks as though there's quite a lot of it, but the first thing you really need to do is go to that link, the link that you see on the screen, hopefully. Read the instructions before you register. There looks as though there's quite a lot. There's a guidance document, there's infographics, there's frequently asked questions, there's templates. It's really, really important that at least one person in the practice reads that in advance. It looks time-consuming, but believe me, if you spend time in this, at this stage, it will certainly save you time later. So please, if nothing else, go back and review this through that link. One of the problems that we've encountered as we've gone along here is that to register with the survey in the first place, you need to have a unique code. And this has really raised a number of questions because every practice in Scotland has a unique code, their site number. Unfortunately, not everyone knows what that site number is. Because of that, we've had to give quite explicit instructions on how to find this. Again, there's a link, and the link will take you to a table. That's the thing on the left-hand side of your screen. You have to go quite far down that table, and you find a line that says Dent Prac. When you click on that link, it'll open up a list, and that list will have the site numbers and addresses and locations of every practice in Scotland, every NHS practice in Scotland. I know it sounds complicated, it looks quite complicated, but I've done it for other people, so if I can do it, believe me, anyone can find it. If you are struggling, if you get into the list, the next slide will show you what the list looks like, and there's actually a quicker search button. Usually the addresses are clumped together in health board areas. Occasionally, if your site number's been developed a wee bit later, it might be further down the list. And if you're struggling to find it, there is a way of doing it. Pressing Control and F simultaneously, there's a search button that lets you search through your own address. So it's there. I know it sounds complicated, but as I say, it's actually not that difficult if you just get yourself into that link. We appreciated as well, there's lots of different situations and different practice configurations. You might have more than one practice, your staff might work across a number of practices, and we can be a bit flexible around that to make it suit if you've got more than one site number. It might suit you to do a survey in every practice you have and every site you have. On the other hand, you might want to merge the practices together, and that's certainly possible if they're all in the same health board area. If you want to do that, though, you need to get in touch with the team at HIS before you can register. The same applies if you work in PDS, there's teams working different sites. We can be flexible about developing a site code that suits, but you need to get in touch with the team to be able to make that happen. Just to recap now, we've come to have the thing on your screen now is the report you'll receive, but you've gone through a lot before that. So just to recap, your practice is registered to do the survey. All the team have been registered and have had an email and will have access to the survey, which they'll have completed and they'll have submitted. Once everyone in the practice that you think is going to complete the survey has done that, the report can be downloaded. There's a kind of cut-off point of 75% of the participants having finished the survey before this can be downloaded. So it's quite important that most people complete. But this report is the first thing you'll get back in relation to the work you've done so far. You need to familiarise yourself with this, and I need to explain what it is you're looking at. If you look at this report, the data has been divided into two groupings. There's a group of dentists, the dentists and practice managers, and the other group, all other members of staff in the team. and there's a comparison made between these two groups for each of the component parts of workload, communication, teamwork, safety, steering systems and leadership. What you're trying to look at in this is a difference in viewpoint. For example, in communication, the dentist and practice managers might have scored that really highly, and the other members of the team might have given that a low score, which means there's a discrepancy there. There's a gap between perception of how communication is within your practice setting. And that identifies areas that you maybe have to consider for some improvement measures and consider as part of your action plan. So that's how you review, and that's the areas for consideration. This is just an example. The gap might not be that significant, and if you're doing something really well, there won't be a gap at all. So that's why there's two groupings, so that you can compare the data and look at areas that you might have to improve in terms of your climate within the practice and the culture within the practice. Hope that makes sense, and we can answer questions later. The other part of the report that you'll get is a comparison, another comparison, but it's a kind of average comparison between everyone else who's completed the survey at that point in time and your practice. To be honest, it's just a kind of, it's a guideline of how things are progressing. If you did this early, you're not comparing yourself with very many people. If you're later on, there's a bigger group to compare with. It's not the comparison really that's important. This just gives you a flavour of what's happening in the background. It's really your own results that are important to you, because these are the bits you've got to focus on. It's not a competition. Sorry, jump again. Sorry. As part of the survey, some of you might have noticed something, and this is something that's been brought up a number of times. Some of the questions within the survey ask for a negative response, which is different from the majority of questions. And there is a reason for that. The reason they're worded in that way is to validate the survey and not just to enable you just to click the same button over and over again. It's to make sure you're reading the question and you're answering appropriately. That raised some concerns in relation to the impact of that in your report. This doesn't impact on the reports at all, because the system's able to turn that round, compare like with like within the survey. So don't fret or worry about the fact the questions are pitched a wee bit differently. Just read the questions and reply as asked. It'll be sorted out when your report comes out in the end, so don't worry about that bit. The next thing you have to do is really the most important part of the practice. The first thing you need to do is share the report with everyone. Make sure everyone's seen it, have a chat, make sure that they've reviewed the report and they understand what it is they're looking at. Another thing you have to do is set a date for this meeting and try and make sure it's a date that most people can attend. I mean, it's not critical, but it's really important that everybody that participated is there and able to present their views. The first thing you need to do is look at the report and look at the bits you were really good at. Look at the areas where the results are high for all staff groups and we're all in agreement. Have a chat about that. Don't just ignore it. You really need to celebrate success at the end of the day. Encourage everyone to say what they think about it, discuss why they think you're good at that, and tease out some examples, and then really celebrate that. That's important to make the meeting as valuable as you possibly can. The second part of the meeting is really to look at where the discrepancies are and where the gaps are in the report. You need to pick out 3 areas where you think you've not maybe performed as well as you might. This can sometimes be quite challenging, and in my experience when we did it in the practice, I had to listen to the sound of silence, because people had obviously responded to the questionnaire, how they felt at the time, and they were fine writing it down, but they maybe weren't just so comfortable to voice that in forum. So make sure the facilitation is good and nobody's threatened by it, and they don't feel as though that there'll be punitive measures if they speak out. make sure you encourage everyone to say exactly what they think and listen to them. Once you've listened and everybody's had their chance, you need to discuss the ideas of, maybe listen to some examples and look at ideas that you think might help to improve the situation. This is the most important part of the meeting. It shouldn't be confrontational, but it can raise some emotions. So tread warily and tease out with sympathy. Really, the outcome of the Safety Climate Study is this action plan. The action plan is about considering what's going on at the meeting, and during the meeting try and work out what you could maybe do to help parts of the situation. The template is really there to help you. The headings in the template are there to help you construct a good action plan. You need to think about what you need to improve. You need to look at what the barriers might be. You need to look at who's going to carry out the tasks included in the action plan. And then you need to look at how it's doing as you go along, so make it a standing item maybe in your practice or team meeting. This is really important, and this is the bit that gets you a product at the end of the day and something to work on. So really that's all I want to say about the survey. The key things you have to keep in mind that this is for your dental team, it's not for anybody else, everything's anonymous, it's within your setting, and it's quite an important area to consider and see what you can make better at the end of the day. Don't get too focused on the numbers. It's not a scoring system, it's not a competition. You do need to think about how you can use the results to make things better though. Also remember that it is a snapshot in time. It's just a snapshot of the climate. It might be that somebody filled in their questionnaire and they were in a really bad mood that day, and the scores might be lower for that person than it might have been normally. So take that into consideration. You're trying to change something big. Ingrained attitudes and beliefs are really, really difficult to move, and culture takes a long time. So take small steps to make progress in that department. And that's really, I think, all I've got to say. I'm sure there's been questions have been coming in there as I've been speaking. The next bit of it is for people who want the dentists who need to get their hours or allowance for this. There's information in the guidance about how to upload that. This is really Ness's part of the project. So you upload your action plan onto Ness portal the same way as you would have if you were doing any kind of audit project. The other part of this is there's been an ask from the CDO to try these quality improvement e-learning modules. You have to register with TURAS to do that. These are the 4 modules. There's actually 5, but the expectation is we'll do 4. So that's something else to consider after you've done the safety climate survey for some of your team. So that's us. A fairly quick run through, gives us still a bit of time left at the end. I haven't been looking at the questions. I don't know what I've got. Okay, want us to...
So I think while you're looking at the questions there, one of the questions that Kirsty's just typed in is what happens if practices do not complete the survey?
If you don't complete the survey, you obviously won't get a report. Do you mean if you started it and then didn't complete it, you won't get a report? If you haven't completed the survey, that's up to you. I mean, I can kind of see it's your loss at the end of the day. It's not for anyone else's benefit apart from you. This wasn't something to beat anyone over the head with a stick. It was to make quality improvements for this first year of the cycle a wee bit easier, a wee bit more constructive, and something that everybody might value and then improve on later on when they were doing their quality improvement activity. There's no punitive measures. The Chief Dental Officer has suggested that this is what we should be doing, and it was really for your benefit. So not doing it, up to you. You won't get your 5 hours for this year. There might be another opportunity at some point, but I think you're missing a trick if you haven't completed it, but nobody's going to come and hit you over the head if you haven't done it, but you're lost.
Andrew has asked, is it okay to use the action plan template as format for a submitted action plan, and how long should it be?
It's not how long it is, it's the quality of what's in it. Nobody's going to interrogate the action plan, and yes, upload that template with your with columns filled in. I mean, if nobody's looking at it, but you're not going to benefit from a one-word answer, it's reflection. Reflection's a huge part of our professional life now, and an action plan device like that is a really good opportunity to reflect effectively. And put your thoughts down. Nobody's going to punish you, nobody's going to look at it. It's you, it's your action, and it's up to you how you take it forward. But it's honest reflection at the end of the day.
Monsoon is asking if a maximum of 3 areas where the practice underperform and concentrate on, is it just a maximum 3 areas? Will that be sufficient info to give as the audit hours?
I suppose before Irene jumps in there, I would say we probably wouldn't look at it as underperforming. We would look at it as an opportunity to improve. There may actually be stuff that you do quite well, but you think you could do a bit better. And certainly at the start of your action plan, we would want you to pick 3 things that you do really well and celebrate that, and think about how you can actually amplify that within your practice and spread it to other areas in your practice, and then look at the 3 areas where you think you could do things a bit better. Irene, anything else?
Yeah, it's just not about creating a maximum. If there were other areas, if there were more than 3 areas you thought you could improve, there's nothing to stop you putting that in the action plan. But as I said, nobody is going to interrogate the action plan. That doesn't mean you ignore the action plan. It means you put, as I said earlier, honest reflection within that. And if there's more than 3, that's fine. If there's less, well done.
Lorna has said, will there be a second survey in the future to see if the scores change?
It's possible. There's been some discussion around, probably not for next year, but probably for year 3. It might be brought back into effect. And you're absolutely right. It's a really good, you noticed maybe in the report that was there, the example of the report that compared your practice with your team with the rest of the submissions. There was a column there that looks at the comparisons from year to year. We don't think it's appropriate probably every year, but in year 3 of this cycle, it might be possible to do that again, and you could make a comparison, and it is a really good indicator.
Okay, and Jay and Colin have both kind of asked the same question. It's saying that all the dentists in the same practice submit the same action plan.
Yes, one action plan only.
And they'll get the same.
And they'll get the same hours. The action plan should be not done by one person. You know, it should evolve and develop from your conversation at the meeting. So it's up to one person to submit it, but when they go into portal, they'll put all the dentists who attended onto that submission, so you all get the same. And it shouldn't be, there's nobody leading on it effectively. Somebody might have to write it up. If you think that's the lead, that's fine. But your action plan's for your practice, so it's only one that's needed to be uploaded onto portal, and all the dentists who are actually there will get accreditation for doing that.
Martin and Jessica have been asking a bit about TURAS. So I think the QI modules via TURAS is an additional ask from the CDO. That's not actually coordinated through HISP as part of this. The modules are there. They don't go towards your QIA, they go towards your CPD. The 4 modules will take about 30 minutes each, and you'll be credited 30 minutes per module, so that'll be 2 hours in total. I think what we would do is encourage as many people in the practice to complete them as you can. And I think the benefit in that is everybody in the practice, when you identify your improvements as part of your action plan, the more people that know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, the more likelihood you have of actually getting sustainability with those changes, and I think the more people that know about the QI methodology that supports this means that actually dentists don't need to run those improvement projects, and they can be run within the practice teams, which will actually give the practice teams a bit of ownership around that as well. So I think anybody and as many people in the practice as possible should be doing them.
Helen is asking that 2 of the dentists in the practice did not complete the safety climate survey. She's asking if the practice should redo the safety climate survey to get a new report, or can the dentist still come to the meeting to help with the action plan? Will they still get the audit hours and allowance?
That's quite a difficult one. If they didn't participate in the survey, that's a shame. I don't know what the reason for that was. Maybe they joined later.
He's happy to redo it.
Yeah.
The report.
That would need to come from admin. I don't think it's possible to add people.
If they email us, we can open the back.
Yes.
Right.
So if you email us, we could probably, if you email us at the email address that we've posted with that concern, we can get in touch with the IT that hosts the system. It may well be that you need to rerun the surveys within the whole practice, but we could delete the one that's there. So it's up to you as a practice to discuss how you want to move forward with that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if they haven't actually participated in the survey, I don't really think it would be appropriate to award the hours for attending the meeting effectively. I think it would be good that they still attended the meeting, but it's a bit of a grey area as to whether we could award the full hours for somebody that hadn't actually participated in the survey itself.
Hazel has asked, is it mandatory for private practices?
It's not really, mandatory is not a word I would use to describe this in any shape or form. It's certainly desirable, but private practices in this situation haven't been involved. This is really an NHS initiative, and we haven't involved private practices.
So talking mandatory, Stuart has said they got told this was mandatory. Is that not true?
I don't know who used the word mandatory. There has been a request from the Chief Dental Officer that this is what you do in year 1. The point, I suppose, is it's part of terms of service to do something. The terms of service don't stipulate exactly what you should do. The request came from the Chief Dental Officer, and it was in the interest of the profession to have this rolled out as widely as possible. No one, as far as I know, has used the word mandatory about it, but it's certainly desirable and advised from the Chief Dental Officer's perspective.
Similarly, from Colin, who asked that he heard it's mandatory for DTP practices too. So
I'm not absolutely sure. But DT practices are in a better position to determine what the VDPs do within that year. And if they've determined that that's one of the things that DT practices should do, whether you want to call that mandatory or not, mandatory kind of implies it's a legal requirement, and that isn't the situation. But if the VT directors have determined that they want VT practices to do the safety climate survey, and that's part of the VT package, which is slightly aside from normal general practice settings.
David is asking if we can get the QI hours any other way for this year. I think within HIS, that's not for us to determine. The ask from the CDO from us was for us to host the safety climate survey.
Can I just come in and say that there's no requirement to do hours per year, to be perfectly honest. In the past, you have a 3-year cycle, and quite often, lots of people don't actually do anything at all until year 3. So that's an artificial timescale in relation to the need to do this in year 1. The reason a year was set was because that fitted the schedule to do the safety climate survey, and it was open for a limited amount of time. So you're in a 3-year cycle, and there is no determinants about what you do in what time scale, and that's not in the terms of service. It seems logical to spread things across the year, and that was another benefit of the cycle. You could get 5 hours for this year through doing the cycle and through doing the survey, and that led to another 2 years where there will be options, and there'll be other options put out there that will be offered to you as national projects that you can take part in then. If you want to use your hours up doing something else, nobody's going to stop you, but the net system's capacity to do something completely different for every single practice and every single dentist is limited now.
I think, Irene, as well, you kind of alluded to the fact that there may be an option to run the safety climate survey again in year 3, and perhaps the advantage of doing the safety climate survey this year is that you get that snapshot in time. Next year, you can probably focus down on doing the improvement around the areas that you've identified from your report, and then by rerunning the report perhaps in year 3, that completes that cycle, and that would give you the 3 years perhaps.
Gets you 15 hours in one fell swoop, but it's your choice if you feel there's other pressing things that you need to do, but that's the preferred option.
Hello. Sorry, I've been trying to type in a message, but it doesn't seem to accepting it. Irene, it's John Davidson here. Thank you very much for that today. We've got a report. Would it be wise to circulate that report to all the members of staff prior to having a meeting?
Yes, without a doubt. And just with a wee bit of a clue, they might kind of not know what they're looking at, but it's quite important. They'll see it. There's some, there's some clues within it that they might not have picked up. So that just actually having that in their hands a really useful tool. And if they bring it along to the meeting, you can discuss it further at that point.
Right. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, as a general practitioner, I think this is a no-brainer. We're being offered it as hours for CPD or towards our audit. We should really all be doing it.
Tom, can you put that in writing for me? You're being applauded by the company.
Can we just say that we didn't prompt you to
No,
say that?
Okay, so thanks very much for that.
You're welcome.
So Scotty Ham is asking how many QI hours, and I've put that in the chat. But basically completing the survey, having your team meeting, and then coming up with your action plan, and only on uploading the action plan to the NEST portal can the dentist claim their 5 hours of QIA hours and allowance.
That's right. Agree.
Can DCPs claim CPD for completing the survey? That's a whole load of French to me, Irene.
Yeah. Actually, it's a really good question, and unfortunately, the answer's no, and the answer's no because of when the GDC used to say we needed to do verifiable CPD and general CPD, this would have fitted with verifiable. Unfortunately, we've moved into the realms of having to do less hours of enhanced CPD. There's no way that we were able to make the survey as such to comply with the requirements for enhanced CPD. So unfortunately, you would in the past have been able to get general CPD for it, but it doesn't fit into the requirements that the GDC determines for enhanced CPD, I'm afraid. So not in this situation.
Okay, so thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We found this really useful. It's been really helpful to hear from you. I would say if there's any queries that still haven't been answered or anything in the chat box that we've missed, please do not hesitate to email the email address that's in the chat box, and we'll happily pick up your comments. I think for us as well, Obviously, this is the first time we've run a WebEx with you as a sort of dental community, and if we do one in future, your feedback's really important to us. We realise we'll probably get slated in terms of the technical issues we had at the start, and again, we apologise wholeheartedly for that. I'm glad we got over it. But Lorraine's just going to run a couple of polls just to give us some feedback, so if you wouldn't mind hanging on the line just for a couple of minutes, she'll take you through them, and after that, thank you very much again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to run the first question, which hopefully you can see on your screen. So it's what stage of the safety climate survey is your practice currently at? And the options are, haven't registered yet, staff are completing their surveys, we've done a report, we've had our team meeting, and we've completed our action plan. If you can see the polling section and you can choose it from the polling window, that's great. If not, please just pop your answer into the chat box as well. And we'll leave that poll open just for another 30 seconds or so. Thank you. That's great to see a lot of people are participating. Leave it open at about 10 seconds. It looks like everybody that's going to participate has submitted. So I'll just close the poll now. So thank you very much for taking part. If you can just bear with me for a few seconds, I'll upload the next question. I'll pop it on the screen for those that can see, give you a chance to have a think about it. Okay, so the next question is, what has been a key learning point for you from this WebEx? Again, if you bear with me 1 second, there'll be an option in the polling window for you to submit, or again, feel free to pop your answers in the chat box for us. Thank you. Okay, that should now be in the polling window for you to submit your responses. And again, because it's a free text one, I'll just leave the line open just for a minute or so, just to give you enough time to pop your answers in for us. So again, thank you very much for participating. That's great. Again, thank you. There's lots of people taking part, so thank you very much. I'll leave it open again for another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll move on to the next question. It's still showing there's a couple of people in progress. Again, I'll just give it an extra 5 or 10 seconds just to let you get finished, and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay, thank you very much again. Okay, now the previous question should now be loading. So again, I'll pop it up on the screen, so just bear with me a second. It'll take a second or two to appear in the polling window. Next question is, following this WebEx, how confident do you feel about completing the safety climate survey for your practice? And you'll see there's some options there for you. Okay, and again, that question should now be available in your polling window. Thank you again for a great response and great participation with this. So thank you very much. Your feedback is really helpful for us. Just give this one another couple of seconds for a few people just finishing. Okay, that's great. Now just move on to the next and final question, which is, what could have made this WebEx even better? I think we can maybe guess what some of those guesses would be, but please do give us your feedback. It is the first time we've run this WebEx with yourself, so
no, be honest.
please let us know. Yeah. So if you bear with me one moment, that will be available in the polling section. Okay.
Right.
And again, because it's free text, I'll leave it open just slightly longer, just to give you a chance to type in your feedback. And I can see already that there's a number of you actively completing it. So again, thank you very much.
And just while we're completing it, just a reminder that this will be uploaded, the presentation, to the website, and you'll be able to access that for other members of your team. We'll probably edit out all the technical issues we had at the start, so that might take us a few days, so bear with us.
Okay. It looks like most people have now completed. So again, thank you very much, and I'll close this poll as well. Excellent. Let's leave on the screen for a couple of minutes, just some information there. Again, as we mentioned, this will be available on the website, but these are the sort of key contact information if you need any further, if you have any further queries, and it will be available to see on the website. Yeah. So thank you very much, and that concludes today's WebEx.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.